Hey everyone. Before we get started this week, I just wanted to acknowledge that yet again, parts of Appalachia are currently recovering from another historic flood. This includes parts of southern West Virginia, eastern Kentucky, East Tennessee, and southwest Virginia. A lot of people might wonder how they can help, what they can do. And I really want to encourage everyone to donate to mutual aid groups that are on the ground and doing recovery work hour by hour, day by day. This is not the first time that many of these areas have experienced this. So unfortunately, these mutual aid groups have a lot of experience recovering post-disaster. Specifically, I'd really like to shout out East Kentucky Mutual Aid. They do so much good work. They have been doing such good work for years, since 2020 really. And you can donate to them via Venmo at EKY Mutual Aid or Cash App EKY Mutual Aid. Please beware of fraud accounts because, scammers will take opportunity when they see one, I guess. And there have been some fraud accounts for East Kentucky Mutual Aid that have been created. In addition to East Kentucky Mutual Aid, I also want to shout out Cumberland Mountain Mutual Aid, which you can Venmo at CMM Aid or Cash App CM Mutual Aid. They also have PayPal. Cumberland Mountain Mutual Aid at gmail.com is their PayPal account. The Care Collective of Southwest Virginia is also taking monetary donations through Venmo. That is at Care Collective of SWVA. And then the Lonesome Pine Mutual Aid, which is also located in Southwest Virginia, they are taking donations through PayPal. Their PayPal is samsva at gmail.com. So these are mutual aid groups on the ground doing recovery work. I have a lot of feelings and a lot of thoughts and a lot of anger. I might process that another day on this show, but for now, I'm just going to encourage you all to donate to mutual aid. Be kind to your neighbor. And yeah, I hope you enjoy this upcoming episode of Mountain Laurels. The beauty of the Appalachian Mountains has inspired many a poet, many a songwriter, many a novelist. Over the years, we've seen acts like Dolly Parton, poets like James Still, and novelists like Barbara Kingsolver use these mountains in their storytelling. One poet I had only recently become familiar with is Effie Waller-Smith. She's from Pike County, and as someone that grew up on the border of Pike County, Kentucky, she's not someone that ever was taught to me in school. Luckily, years later, as an adult, I became familiar with bits of her story, and I was really excited to do an episode on her this week. I am so happy that I was able to talk with Jess Mullins Fullen of Big Stone Gap, Virginia, and learn a bit more about Effie's life, her inspiration, hear some of her poetry, and I'm really excited for you to hear this episode. This may not be someone that you've ever heard of, but I hope when you come away from this episode that this is someone that you want to learn more about. She's an amazing woman. Yeah, I hope you enjoy. Can you first tell me just a little bit of like how you sort of got this interest in Effie's life and how it's sort of impacted your life?
Well, I never knew of Effie Waller-Smith until some folks who were working on a project and living in Pikeville at the time, they were working with the Appalachian Center for the Arts in downtown Pikeville as well. And they had entered a relationship with, it's something from the Smithsonian. It was like living history, living oral history. I cannot remember specifically the title of this programming, but it was taking stories about people or events in small towns across rural America and uplifting them. And so when this couple who was working in Pikeville at the time for the Appalachian Center for the Arts was approached, they had an awareness of Effie Waller-Smith. And so the town had also agreed that this would be a really great person and character. She was not a character, she was a person, but this would be a really great historical Tocquevillian to uplift. I knew this couple because we had worked together really briefly on a theatrical production right before COVID. That production was subsequently shut down because of COVID, but obviously we had an awareness of each other. And so they reached out to me and asked me if I would be interested in helping make this project come to life. So the project was in two parts. It was part exhibit and then part like monologue, one woman show. And when they called me and we had our first conversation about it, the word I always use is gobsmacked because I had never heard of Effie Waller Smith. I'm originally from Letcher County, Kentucky, which shares a county line with Pike County. I grew up like half an hour away, maybe less, from Pikeville, where Effie was born and raised and lived a large chunk of her life. I'd never heard of her. And so I was like, wow, I am someone who I think had spent at that time quite a bit of time trying to see myself in my heritage, if that makes sense. I was in my early 20s, and so while I had started and was nearing the end of my journey of understanding my Appalachianness, I was also still very much trying to reconcile my Blackness and my Appalachianness. And if I had known about a person like Effie Waller Smith growing up, that would have made my journey so much smoother and it would have made that reconciliation so much easier. I know about her now, and part of the reason why it is so important to me that more people know about Effie Waller Smith is because it is the existence of people like her that really tell a truer and more robust story about what it means to be Appalachian and who is Appalachian and who has been Appalachian for many generations since the creation of the socio-political Appalachia.
You know, it's funny you say that, like growing up in Letcher County and you'd never even heard of Effie Waller Smith. I grew up in
Never.
Floyd County, which also shares a county line with Pike County. I have family. My dad's from Pike County. It's a name that never entered my sphere of knowledge. And it's really interesting to me how common that is when it's minorities, like in Appalachia, how most people, I would venture to say, don't really, until you hear the name and then you hear more about them, like it's almost like they enter the zeitgeist for a minute of Appalachia academia or something like that. Whatever, the zeitgeist of Appalachia, I guess I'll just call it. And then you
Yeah,
like,
micro, macro, micro, macro.
yeah, and then
Okay.
you just hear about them all the time. Like, I don't know if you've
Hmm.
experienced that, but and then it like stalls out though,
Yeah.
and it stops. And what I think is cool is that, like I said, I'd never heard of Effie Waller Smith until I heard about your show, your one
Hmm.
woman show. And what's cool is like that one woman show still travels and still tells the story.
Well, it's changed too, right? Like, the original script was written by Eric Buckley, and I worked with his wife, Robin. This was the couple at the app at the time. They are no longer with the Appalachian Center for the Arts. They have since moved on to other organizations and projects. So that script went with them. But it was really important for me to continue to tell the story of Effie Waller Smith. So it's changed and it's evolved, but at the core, like the kernel impetus is always going to be sharing her with other Appalachians and with the world, honestly, because I think that that really feeds into like narrative change of place as well. As much as I want other Appalachians to know about Effie Waller Smith, who is cool as hell on so many different levels. I want people from outside of the region to know about Effie Waller Smith as well because she is the truth of this place. Like these historical figures are the truth of this place. That's really important.
Yeah, well, that's why I created this podcast, and that's why I asked you to come on so people can learn about Effie.
Oh, thank you.
So yeah, tell me more about Effie. Start wherever you want in her life.
Okay, I will start with her. She was a little baby. In 1879. She was born January 6th, 1879. She was the baby of the family. So she had two older siblings. Rosa Waller was the middle child, her older sister, and her older brother was Alfred Waller. And she was the daughter of Frank Waller and Sibby Ratliff Waller, who were both formerly enslaved people. So she was just one generation removed from slavery in the United States of America. And her father had been enslaved in Virginia. And there are some reports that he had even been conscripted to the Confederacy, and so he had been basically enslaved by the Confederate Army to serve the Army, like
Oh
on a
wow.
camp. But at war's end, he broke away and he just made his way westward into southwestern Virginia and then into eastern Kentucky. Sibby, Effie's mother, was born and raised in Pikeville area. And so she had been enslaved in the house of a General Ratliff. That was not his title, that was his name. But then at war's end, she was obviously a free woman and she decided to stay in Pikeville, where it is likely her mother was still living at the time as well. And Effie's parents met because her father got a job as on the wharf. So at the time, the Big Sandy River was like a major port in Pikeville for
That's so
steamboats,
wild
and
to
so he
think about. Sorry.
I know, and so he would have been working where the courthouse is now was where the like steamboat port. I don't know if that's the correct vernacular, but that's where he would have been working. And so he
Incredible.
actually got, yeah, and he actually was a wharf master. So I think that this is also like a really interesting piece of the history, which means that he was a manager. So he would have had like men working under him. But at some point in the late 1860s, early 1870s, her parents would have met and fallen in love and decided to get married. So her parents had been married about a decade when she was born. In between her father's arrival in Pikeville and Effie being born, her father had also been able to gain skills in blacksmithing. So he was a blacksmith in Upper Chloe Creek, which is a holler in Pikeville that is still there.
Mm-hmm.
It was an integrated community at the time in 1870s Eastern Kentucky. Um, and so he also owned land, so he had saved up enough money to buy their family farm, and then he also owned land, other parcels of land within the county and outside of the county. So he was a black land prospector at the time too. Now, this was when Reconstruction was happening in other parts of the South, and so there were a lot of moving parts, but this was the experience that they were having most immediately, and this is the history that we do know just from the records that we have. Let me also say, I did not do any of this research on my own. Effie Waller Smith would have unfortunately fallen into anonymity if it hadn't been for David Deskins, um, who made it his life's work. This is a local historian in Pikeville who made it his life's work to uncover the stories of Effie Waller Smith. And he had come upon some of her poetry when he had been a younger man and had spent many, many years piecing all of this together. So, shout out to David Deskins for what we do know about Effie Waller Smith's life and legacy. But anyway, those are her beginnings. So she was living and a child in Upper Chloe Creek in Pikeville, right outside of downtown. By all accounts, she came from a really pretty well respected family, and I make that assumption based on the fact that her father was a blacksmith, which was a highly regarded position in a community at the time because they were always in high demand. And she and both of her siblings attended District A Colored School, which was the black, like elementary, middle school at the time, serving their area. And that was about 4 miles away from their home. So she and her siblings would travel 4 miles one way and 4 miles back just so they could go to school. Her parents never did learn how to read, but they wanted to make sure that their kids could.
I assume walking 4 miles a day, one way.
Yeah, that was probably child's play to people back then, but I mean, for me, I'm so sedentary. Like I sit at a computer all day for my desk job. But I mean, I reckon back then it was different.
Yeah,
So
I've heard stories about people walking from Making to Neon, which to me
yeah,
today sounds like that's a very Letcher County specific. If you don't know
yeah.
Letcher County,
Yeah, I don't really know what a synonymous route would be somewhere else. But
yeah,
yeah, I mean,
long time. It seems
did
like a
you
long
cut
time.
through to like Martha Jane Potter area though? Is that how they? Okay, we
Yeah,
don't have to
I don't
do
know. We
Letcher
don't have to
County
get on all
references
that,
anymore.
but if
Yeah,
anyone is familiar with Letcher County, just think about people walking from Making to Neon. I mean,
yeah,
that is that might be 4 miles.
yeah,
I don't know.
yeah. I'll be longer.
It's probably a little bit longer, but yeah. Anyway, walking 4 miles one way. uh, That to me,
Yeah, and they would do it.
as much as I hated school, wouldn't have been me.
They did it though, and I mean, I think that at that time it was very different. Like school wasn't something that anyone was forcing you to go to. It was like a treat, and honestly, I think it was withheld so often from young people back then because they would have to stay home to like work
Yeah,
on the family farm. Like my great grandmother who grew up in Pike County in the early um 20th century. So she was removed from Effie Waller by about a generation, maybe a generation and a half. She was born in 1915 and told me when I was a child, she's unfortunately no longer with us, but she told me that like if the weather was pretty outside, she had to stay home. Like she didn't get to go to school. So she only ever achieved an eighth grade education.
yeah. It's a totally different world back then. Like, education is a privilege, and sort of a familiar through line in most of the women that I've talked about so far on this podcast is that they loved school and were so happy to get to go, and often they weren't able to go after the age of like 15.
Yeah.
It was over.
Effie was able to go. So there was a valuing of education in a way, either in her family unit or as encouraged by her older siblings, who are several years older than her, like 4 years older and like 6, 7 years older, because eventually all of them would go on to go to the Kentucky Normal School for Colored Persons, which was in Frankfort, Kentucky, and they all became teachers. So first her brother went after he had matriculated through all of the schooling that could be afforded to him at District A. Then her sister went, and then Effie was able to go too. And also, speaking to the point about like the the treat that it was to be able to go to school, from what I have read, like oftentimes her siblings were able to go to school much more frequently than she was. She was kept home more often because they could come home and teach her. until eventually they made their way to Frankfurt for a brief period of time for their teacher certifications. And then Effie was able to go to school more regularly. Eventually, she also, like I had mentioned, ended up in Frankfurt for a period of a couple of years, where she got her teaching licensure and shortly thereafter returned home, and she was teaching back in District A colored school.
So, how did Effie go from teaching at the District A colored school to becoming a poet?
She had always been a writer. Part of what David Diskins did when he was collecting her poetry and researching her life is that he made sure that her two volumes of poetry, Songs of the Months and Rhymes from the Cumberlands, were republished. And so there are many poems in both of those collections that it appears that she would have written when she was in school, because she's talking about, looking at her one true love, who was some boy that she had in her class, right? So she was always someone that was very interested in writing, and it seems that poetry appealed to her. So she was just kind of always writing. But when she came home and she was teaching classes, doing the teacherly thing at District A Color School, student becomes the teacher kind of thing. She was also living again, once again, in and around the Pikeville area. And contemporaneously, Mary Elliott Flannery was also living in Pikeville. Somehow they came into contact with each other. Um, and you have to imagine that a Black woman who was writing poetry in Eastern Kentucky at that time, I don't know if she had designs to be a published writer. I don't know if she had designs and just thought that it would never happen because she was a Black woman living and working in Eastern Kentucky. I don't know. But when she met Mary Elliott Flannery, this person used some of her connections. Effie let her leverage those connections to become a published writer. So that's how she became published the first time, and that was in Harper's Magazine.
So, is it just one poem or a collection of poems?
Yeah, no, so Harper's Magazine was one poem, and then there were a couple of poems that would have been published in smaller publications, but for the two collections, those were like bound volumes. One of them had like an introduction by Elliot Flannery, because this was a big name at the time, so it gave some credence to the work, even though I believe it speaks for itself, obviously. However, this was right after the height of Reconstruction, so.
Yeah. So, she gets her poem published.
Mhm.
And what happens after that? Does she just continue teaching like nothing happened? Or does she gain like outside interest to her work?
You know, she was able to publish two volumes of poetry, so there was enough support both from within her community and outside of the community for her to publish a second. But this wasn't ever someone who gained like national notoriety, right? And I don't know if it is a function of like her sponsorship changing to be ahistorical. We don't really know like how that relationship continued to move or what it looked like. What we do know is that Effie, um, was very, very inspired by nature. And so oftentimes she was writing about place, and she would also often mention people in her community. So she was like a down home girl. you know. She was for her place and she was for the people that she called her neighbors and her kin. I think the most interesting parts of Effie's story are just about how she lived her life. And again, we'll never know the answers, but I think that what we can pull from how she lived her life are very, very interesting. Right before she was able to publish, well, I guess a couple of years before she published her first volume in 1905, she like married this guy who had come into town pretty similarly as her father had, by way of walking and by way of water, was in around probably working on the wharf. His name was Ulysses, Liss Cockrell. We know what we do know is that she lived with him for like 2 months and then left and then filed for a divorce in 1900s, early 1900s, Pikeville, and got the divorce. Apparently, okay, and so this is the tea. And so apparently, he was like larked up with another woman, had brought some other woman into Effie's house.
Oh,
And so
no, no,
she,
no.
right, so she and some of her girls petitioned the court, and her girls were like, yes, he is trifling. And the court granted Effie Waller Smith her divorce in like early 1900s Pikeville. So that, this is how she lived her life. Um, there are reports that in and around town she was known as Miss Effie. So this is someone who was like loved and adored, and like there was even like a nickname moniker for her, Miss Effie. Um, this is someone who taught in many different schools across the region. This is someone who ended up marrying, and she wrote about this in her poetry, ended up marrying like her childhood first love, which was Charlie Smith, which is how she added the Smith onto her name. Some other things that we do know, again, going back to just what we can say for certain, is that Charlie had been like this moonshiner kind of character that her daddy had bailed out of jail, and then some years down the line he would become like a sheriff's deputy,
Oh,
right?
wow.
Like, and then he would be shot delivering a warrant
Oh my gosh.
and die, and she would never remarry. And this happened also, I will add, in a very, 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 very short period of time, right? So she was living in and around Pikeville, Pike County, Kentucky. She had moved back. She was teaching for a couple of years. She met Liz Cockrell. She divorced Liz Cockrell. She had been building a relationship with Elliot Flannery. She was able to publish one volume. She got reconnected with Charlie, who then had moved finally back into the area again from another county. They got married. She published another volume, and then he was shot and killed around 1912. So this
Oh,
was like
wow.
10 years, right? Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think in the grand scheme of things, when you think like 10 years, that's a long time. But I mean, when I think about things that happened 10 years ago, it doesn't really feel that far removed from
No,
the
yeah,
experience
that's
I
what
just
I was
had on my
just
life now.
I was just thinking the same thing. I graduated college 10 years ago. I feel like I was just in
Yeah.
college. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't feel that far removed. And she would have been about our age, right? Like she would have been about our age when all of this
So,
was
yeah,
happening.
in 1912, I can do the math really quick, but if you know how old was she
She was
in
born in
19
1979,
eight
89,
eighteen
20,
seventy nine
99, 20. Yeah.
1879, and this all happened like her second husband is
Yeah.
shot
But
dead
this was
in
her true
1912.
love.
So
This was her true love.
she's 33 years old, and
Yeah, she's our age.
that is just like, this is another thing like through line with all the women that I've got to talk about on this show. By the time they're our age, I'm like, oh my god, I would be exhausted. Like
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
much, so much.
Yeah. So much. It was a lot. Um, so much so that shortly after her father's death, um, which I will have to try to discern when that was, she and her mother, there was a like group of religious zealots, we will say, that were traveling through the region. We have to remember Effie had gone through quite a bit of loss. There were some reports circling around that she had even lost a child, but that's been very hard to verify. But anyway, a group of religious zealots coming through, and they were going to eventually go back to their home base in Wisconsin, which seems pretty far removed
Yeah,
from.
how'd you get to Pike County? The
Yeah, I
when I
don't
hear
really know
about
all the
that,
details there.
yeah,
Yeah.
anytime I think about like early 1900s or like someone came from uh Wisconsin, I'm like, what? How did you even how did you even hear of this place? This is a total sidebar, but my dad was born in like 1951, and his his dad was from Colorado. Like, and he was
How did
born in
that happen?
Pike.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was born in Pike County, and I'm just like, how did that ever happen? But yeah, sorry, just a sidebar. So these they are going back to Wisconsin.
Yeah, it was a group of religious zealots, and they were going back to their home base in Wisconsin, and Effie and her mother decided to join. So for me, that just brings up, you know, the dearth of things that she had been through to leave this place that she had written really romantically about. I mean, enough for at least two volumes of poetry because it's about nature, it's about religion, and it's about culture and other people. She often like would recount cultural celebrations that were happening in the area, like a corn shucking festival, like stuff like that. But they left and they went to Wisconsin, and this group of religious zealots like ended up with all of their money. Like, just like think about what that means. Like, it was a group that had taken them and they were giving them all of their money, and they had nothing. And so they were then kind of like stuck with this group in Wisconsin, so far away from home.
It's giving
And
cult.
well, we've been asked not to use that word, but one
Okay,
thing about Effie is that she was litigious, and so she sued these people, and she won in Wisconsin in the early 1900s, won all of her money back, enough so that she was able to set her and her mother up in a nice home in Neenah, Wisconsin, where Effie would live the rest of her life. Some of what we know about Effie is through the like the tellings of her adoptive daughter. Her name was Ruth Mullins, and she was the daughter of one of her students that she had had. And Effie had like lived in the home of the grandparents of this student while she had been teaching on a circuit, which was very common at the time. The families of students of teachers who might have been traveling between schools would often house these teachers. But she had been one of Effie's students, and when she had gout, this student's personal religion, she was a woman, a grown woman at this time, and no longer a student, but she was hopeful that prayer could help, and she did not want to take any medication to manage her gout. She eventually died. She eventually passed away, but before she passed away, she had asked Effie to please take her child, and so her child's name was Ruth, and she came and got Ruth, and they went back to Wisconsin, and then many years down the line, Ruth also became a teacher and was one of the first Black teachers in like a Christian school in or around Neenah, Wisconsin. There have been some like interviews of Ruth at the time, and so because of what she had been able to accomplish as like doing her part to integrate schools, and she had attributed her desire to become a teacher on her adoptive mother, who had really instilled like a love of learning in her, and that was Effie. But Effie like definitely lived another life in Wisconsin. I mean, she became like a really prolific award-winning gardener that was really well known for her gardening. But according to Ruth, who folks have, before she passed, she had been able to like speak really briefly with some people who had been researching Effie, namely David Deskins. And he asked her, was there any more writing? Like, because there had been this hope for so long that maybe there was like a trunk somewhere that had writings that she made. And as far as Ruth knew, there hadn't been. And to me, I think what is so, I guess, powerful about that is if you are from or have grown up in Central Appalachia, there is like this love of place that is shared around so many that is almost poetical. And it's like the Cumberlands, which is what Effie called the mountains, which was also a common moniker for the Central Appalachian Mountain Range at the time, the Cumberlands. Like, if the Cumberlands called to her so deeply that they were almost like her muse, that she stopped writing when she was no longer in the mountains, like that, to me makes sense. That totally makes sense, especially because her writing was so deeply inspired by like the natural beauty of place. Like Effie was exploring the breaks before they were the breaks. Like imagine
Hmm.
that.
Yeah.
Like she would like just go to the breaks and like hang out with her friends. And she was also exploring the breaks before the American chestnut blot. Like imagine
Wow.
that, right? So yeah,
Yeah, it's when you think about the fact that she was able to write about those places before they became what they were or what we
yeah,
know of them today, it's, it makes me think like she's probably got one of the best perspectives of the area.
yeah. I don't know. I feel like there's so many places to like fill in the gaps. Like Effie was also writing poetry about like she was writing like feminist poetry at the time. She's got one poem called Bachelor Girls, um, which like talks about these women that she knew and went to school with. Like she's no old maid. She's not afraid to let you know she's her own boss.
Mm.
Um, she's not diseased. She's easy pleased, is not nervous, is not cross. She's no desire, whatever for, misses to precede her name, the blessedness of singleness, all her life will proudly claim. This is like the turn of the century. She talks and writes of women's rights in language forceful and clean. She does not shirk, she does her work. Amid life's fast wrestling world. So come what may, she's here to stay, the self-supporting bachelor girl. She was writing this girl, I mean, to me, which makes sense, this young woman from Eastern Kentucky was writing this stuff, but you wouldn't, so many people wouldn't ascribe that kind of writing to this person who, you know, grew up down the road.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. After just hearing about her a little bit, though, I'm like, yeah, she totally would write something
it
like
makes
that.
sense.
It totally makes
Yeah.
sense because one of the things I'm going to take away from this also, this conversation, is that Effie was not going to take you to court unless she knew she was going to win.
Yeah, listen, I mean, she would line it out. Like she had it figured out. She had her girls on one side. She was like, we are going to take this down, this trifling man. And I mean, she would have her day in court and she would come away the victor.
Whenever you told me she sued the
Religious
reli-
zealots.
religious zealots, thank you, and won, I was like, of course she did. She was not. Yeah, she was
She
not
was
going to
not
go.
playing around.
She's like, this isn't me wasting my time. This is me reclaiming my time.
I mean, I think that we can only make so many assumptions, but it is seeming as though she had her stuff together and she would go in with a plan, and I think that is why she was able to achieve the things that she was able to achieve in a very short time and during and throughout the rest of her life, because she would think through things in that way. So
Also, I mean, she's a Capricorn, so
it's giving Capricorn, right? It really is. It
yeah.
really, really, really is giving
And I
Capricorn.
already know there's Virgo in that chart somewhere.
Yeah, she's so cool though. I wish I would have known. She's like just one of my favorite like local figures. And I think, you and I have talked before about like the power of teaching students about local history or regional history and like how that has changed things for us as like young adults and like the amount of pride that students could have in who they are and where they come from if there was there were teachings somewhere integrated throughout, school curriculums or even just like um extracurricularly programming that they can watch on TV somewhere or at their local library. That's uplifting people like this. So,
Yeah. And you said earlier in the conversation, like if you had known about her when you were younger, that you feel like it would have helped you so much growing up in Eastern Kentucky. That's
yeah,
what
for
I remember. Yeah, I
sure.
don't. And and
Yeah.
and there's a lot of stereotypes,
Yeah,
obviously,
exactly.
about this
Exactly.
place and about the people that are here, the people that exist here. A lot of people don't know that Black people live in Appalachia.
110%.
Um,
110%.
yeah, and I know just from talking with friends, a lot of them talk about how there's a stereotype that Black people don't enjoy nature,
Hmm.
also, and the fact that she was a Black woman in Appalachia writing about the beauty of the place as she experienced it and had such an appreciation for the place. It's like she was
Yeah.
breaking all those stereotypes and also like talking about or writing about women's rights, writing
Yeah.
about, you know, all these things she's experiencing in the world, and also having the confidence to stand up and leave her no good man and uh
Trifling.
yeah,
Trifling.
and also be able to like say no, like this religious group was wrong, and they stole from me, and I want my stuff back. I want what
And
I'm
she got it
owed.
back.
And she got
She
it
got it
back.
back.
I'm just
Yeah.
like, what a badass.
She was a badass, right? She was so badass. I know. I agree. But she was apparently like this little tiny woman. So she was like this
Of
little,
course.
like badass in this little body, like little tiny woman. Like, yeah, doing the thing.
So, she lived the rest of her life in Wisconsin, right?
She would pass of natural causes in 1963.
So she lived a very long life,
She
really.
did.
Yeah.
She did.
Was there any, um, you know, I don't know if this is known, but I'm just wonder if there was any desire in her to come back to Pike County.
Well, you know, there's a saying. This is how the saying goes. I don't know even who to attribute this to. Don't come for me. I saw this on Facebook years ago. But the saying is, I've never met a girl from Kentucky who isn't talking about going back or on her way. So, but aside from like visits, she would never like live full time in Kentucky again.
But she did visit.
I don't know. I mean,
Hmm.
she was able to get Ruth after the death of her mother, and she was able to provide some care, I think, for Ruth's biological mother. But I mean, it is easy for me to assume that she would visit when she could, especially considering like if her brother Alfred or her sister Rosa were still living
Mm-hmm.
in the area. But I have very little knowledge of like where they would eventually end up, what the rest of their lives look like. I do know that they were both teachers, but that's like the gist of it.
And Wisconsin is her final resting place too.
She is buried in Neenah, Wisconsin.
Well, I think she's just, from what we've been able to talk about today, I mean, an incredible woman. Um,
Yeah,
and I hope that this podcast finds the people that it needs to learn about her. Because she's not someone that I think when you just say Appalachian women, it comes to the forefront of anyone's mind. Um,
yeah,
and it's a story that I think has been a little lost
for
for
sure.
years. And yeah, I know, like I mentioned before, you have a one woman play. Are you doing that anywhere soon, or
I don't have anything lined up. There is some workshopping that is coming up as it relates to making that thing as good and as strong and as fun as possible because also something that I get from Effie is that she was like fun. There is something very fun about this person. And so I want to make sure that the story that I'm able to share of a living history of Effie Waller Smith also like, you know, denotes some of the fun that seems very, very implicit to her as a character when we are reading about her on a page.
yeah?
So nothing lined up immediately, but definitely always going to be a person that I want to share with the world through theater and art.
Is there somewhere that people can find out when a show, like, do you need to plug yourself? Feel free to plug yourself.
Okay, so right now I am on the artist roster with Appalachian Arts Institute. So if you want to find out about an upcoming show or like what we as artists are doing, check out AppalachianArtsInstitute.org.
Incredible. Thank you.
You're
I know
welcome.
it's so awkward. I'm just like, plug yourself. Tell everyone all of the wonderful things you're doing. That's the
I
one
know it's
awkward
so
part.
hard. I'm Appalachian. I don't want to brag about myself.
I know. Do you know how many pep talks I had to give myself to even do this podcast? And how many times I almost like went over the edge and my husband was like, Jessica, it's not a bad idea. And I was like, but
It
what
really
if?
isn't. It's a great idea. Oh, wait, also let me go back. Let me clarify. It's not Appalachian Arts Institute.org. It's just AppalachianArts.org.
Appalachian
Check it
Arts.
out.
Appalachian
Appalachian.
Appalachian Arts dot
AppalachianArts.org.
org. Wonderful. Is there anything else you want to add about Effie's life that you think people should know?
I mean, you want to hear a poem?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I have one about nature and I have one about food.
Nature. Let's do nature since
Okay.
we talked a lot about her connection to nature.
Okay. So the one about nature is titled My Native Mountains. That is what she titled it. But it goes, oh, I will say this. The thing that I want to say about Effie Waller Smith, one reason why I love her poetry so much is that it reads conversationally if you understand the sound of place in your and you have it in your mouth. The cadence is just how we talk. It is so special. So this is uh, My Native Mountains by Effie Waller Smith. I love my native mountains, the dear old Cumberlands, rock ribbed and everlasting. How great they are and grand. I love each skyward reaching peak, each glassy glade and dale, each moss and fern clad precipice, each lovely flower decked vale. I love each vine hung rocky glen. I love each dark ravine, though there may hide the catamount and the wild dogs line me. I love my mountains forest, so varied and beautiful. I love each spring and waterfall, so pure and wonderful. I love her richly plumaged birds, the pheasant and the jay, the merry scarlet tanager, the woodpeck, bright and gay. How oft amongst these mountains does the silvery music clear from the lark's throat cheer the traveler, the honest mountaineer? But more in these old mountains, which with wonder I revere. I love with true devotion the people who live here. So here's with love, sincere and dear, for her sons of brawn and worth, and her daughters pure and lovely. the fairest types on earth.
Oh, that's so good. That's so
That's
good.
that's the poem about nature. And the poem about food is applesauce and chicken fried. And this one actually makes me cry if I really get into it because it's about nostalgia and like nostalgia around food and family, which I think is something a lot of people can identify with. Oh, but let's see. You, Applesauce and Chicken Fried by Effie Smith. You may talk about the knowledge that our farmers' girls have gained from cooking schools and cookbooks where all modern cooks are trained. But I would rather know just how, though vainly I have tried, to prepare like mother used to applesauce and chicken fried. Chicken a la Francaise and also fricassee served with some newfangled sauce is plenty good for me until I get to thinking about that home where once I used to bide and where I used to eat. Oh, my applesauce and chicken fried. We always had it once a week. Sometimes we had it twice. And I have even known the time when we have had it thrice. Our good yet jolly pastor on his weekly circuit rides with us once each week gave grateful thanks for applesauce and chicken fried. It seems like I can taste it and even smell it too and see it with my natural eye, though of course it can't be true. And suddenly I am standing at my mother's side, pulling on her skirt and asking for applesauce and chicken fried. That one makes me emotional.
Oh, that's so
Yeah,
good.
that
She's
one makes me
so
so emotional.
incredible.
I
And
know.
so are you. Like
Thank
this is
you.
so good. Like just getting even a little taste of, because I've not been able to see the show. I really want to, but yeah. Oh, so good. So good.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. I will say, just to continue to plug, and really this is to plug more like the other folks with Appalachian Arts who have like taken their brainchild and turned it into this beautiful thing. So also shout out to Malcolm Davis, who started Appalachian Arts. But um, the whole goal of this formation is to tell stories, living history stories of Black Appalachian people who otherwise we like a lot of folks don't know about. It's to spread um, knowledge of them and tell their stories more broadly. So, like, there are so many people who are just as badass and just as cool as Effie Waller Smith. And so, yeah, I'm looking forward to all of the incredible stories of incredible people that are going to bubble up through this initiative.
Me too. Thank you so much, especially for
Yeah.
recording on a Saturday.
Yeah, of course. I got a massage today. I got a free massage. I got lucky. I won a free massage, so this is great. I didn't mind at all. And obviously, like I said, I always want to talk about Effie Waller Smith. It's like a problem.
It's not a problem. If it's a problem, it's a good problem to have.
It is. It definitely is. She's not the problem. I am. No, I'm kidding.
Thanks so much to Jess for doing this episode. I really encourage you to go look up some of Effie's work, what you can find. Hopefully soon, Jess will be putting on her one-woman show in a spot near you, and you'll be able to enjoy that. Thank you so much for listening. This podcast is produced and edited by me, Jessica Miles. Our artwork is created by Hayden Miles, and our theme music is produced by Kenny and Hayden Miles. If you'd like to support the show, you can find us on Patreon at patreon.com/Mountain Laurels Podcast. You can also follow the show on Instagram and Blue Sky.